Everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight for our Tuesday Teacher Talks. My name's Michelle and my partner in crime is Sue. We are together two passionate teachers about literacy and all things science of learning as well as science of reading. And we are a company called Teaching Together. So tonight we wanted to share with everyone out there some really great, one really great routine about paired fluency routines and how to get it set up in your classroom. So let's get started, if it will let me. Firstly, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land where we are presenting tonight, the Wurundjeri people, and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. We would also like to acknowledge any other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. So fluency, it's one of the 5 pillars of reading. Sometimes we talk about the big 6, in fact, including oral language. And we all know a little bit about it. We understand what a fluent reader should sound like, but we have this great definition here. Fluency is the ability to read a text accurately, with automaticity and with expression. Fluent reading builds stamina for reading lengthy or complex texts, and reading fluency serves as a bridge between word recognition and comprehension. So you can see in this image here, this is from Tim Rosinsky from his Why Reading Fluency Should Be Hot article. We have over on the left word recognition, so we're teaching all that decoding and wonderful phonics. And over on the right, what we hope to get to is that comprehension of what we are reading. But the thing that's linking these two is fluency. We need to build up the automaticity of the word recognition, and then we also need to be reading with prosody, that expression and our tone and our rate, so that we can actually take meaning away from what we are reading. Why is fluency so important? Tim Shanahan tells us that fluency instruction can be valuable. It can help them, meaning students, to decode better, read more fluently and improve reading comprehension. So of course this is what we want. We're trying to get our kids to be fluent readers, not only to improve their reading comprehension, but so they enjoy it. We know that when we are disfluent in our reading, it's very hard to enjoy a text. What does the research tell us? Again, Tim Rosinsky tells us that I have learned that rereadings or repeated readings of text can lead to significant and generalised improvements in students' word recognition, fluency and comprehension. So far I've mentioned Tim Rosinsky twice and Tim Shanahan as well. These are a couple of the academics out there that we often refer to. They write great blogs and articles. So you might want to note their names down if you haven't already found them and look them up. Tim Rosinsky is a real expert in the area of fluency and he's written books and articles. I've got one of his books here, the Mega Book of Fluency, which has really useful practical ideas on how to teach and practice and rehearse fluency in different ways. It's not just a bunch of the same thing over and over again. So it's a really great one to use. Sue, do you want to jump in and add anything?
I would just say that that fluency is probably the least researched part of the big 6, if you like, or those pillars of reading. It's probably the area of reading that we know the least about, and probably up until my journey into the science of reading, it was the thing I found hardest to teach. But it's good to know that there has actually been some recent research published, which we can talk about at the end. At the moment, they're mostly in journal articles, but that will start to filter through to more accessible texts. But I think probably the most important thing that fluency tells us is that we know if a child is reading disfluently out loud, they're probably reading disfluently in their head. So their silent reading is disfluent. So it's about the only window we have into how children are actually accessing the texts that they're reading. So that's all from me for now.
Okay, thanks, Sue. And I just picked up on one of your comments then about that silent reading, and tonight what we're presenting here is with the paired fluency. This is one technique that you could use to work into your literacy block so that you're not spending quite so much time just relying on independent reading for those kids to build up that possible fluent reading. Independent reading can be great once you are fluent, but if you are still working really hard at that decoding, then independent reading is not going to give you those gains that you might be hoping for. Okay, so what are the skills included in fluency? We know that we need to think about the rate, the speed, but we don't want speed readers. There has been some people who, with very good intentions, timing their kids, and the kids just trying to get faster and faster with the text throughout a week of practice. And that in some ways can improve their fluency, but if they go a little too far, if they take that sort of challenge of getting really fast too far, they might lose the prosody, that the pacing of it, and the use of punctuation, which is where we actually gain a lot of our comprehension. We need to be able to really read it the way the author intended it to be read. And so that's what we're aiming for. So here on the screen I have rubrics that I've taken from Deslia Konza, a research into practice from the Department of Education South Australia, and this was published in 2011. So it's not the most recent, but it still is valid. And it was also adapted from one of Tim Rosinski and Jay Zuttel back in 1991. So this is a really good way to get an idea of the different components of fluency and what we're aiming for. So into our paired fluency. What is it? So my take on it is that it's a routine that allows students to practice fluency skills through a low-stakes, supportive routine. So the kids don't feel so nervous about reading out loud in front of the whole class, like if you did a round robin or just ask them to read even in your small group guided reading style of practice. That all they have to do is read to one partner. And usually I'll get to that in a moment. I'm already jumping ahead. Let me slow down. So when we are doing paired fluency, it is using repeated readings to allow students to build accurate reading at an appropriate rate and using expression. So tonight we will be talking about who partners with who when you are setting up your paired fluency routine, how we can create a routine, and how important that practice is. Which texts should we be using and where do we find them? We've got lots of good ideas about that. And how much and how often should should we be doing some fluency practice and paired fluency. So let's get started. Creating partnerships. Who do we pair with who? So on the screen we have 3 different sort of scales or assessment to get you started. We have where it says Table 1. This is from that same paper Desley Akonza produced in 2011, Research into Practice. So this is an Australian one, but it does align with the others on the page, on the screen here. We have off to the right a table that's been produced by Tyndall and Hasbrook, who are big names in fluency. And they produced one of these tables in 2011, and this is a revised one. So there are changes. You can Google them, Tyndall and Hasbrook. We can send you the name so that you can get that correct. But when you're doing your research on this one, look for the 2017 updated version. And this has all the grade levels, or from 1 through to 6, so primary school aged. And it shows you the top 90th percentile down to the lowest 10th percentile in each age or grade level. It has your beginning, middle and end, but fall, winter and spring. And it is comparable to this other scale that we have in this over in the centre, the colourful one, which is just a little snippet of a Dibbles assessment. So if you're not familiar with Dibbles, then that's a whole other Tuesday teacher talks. And I think Sue has something she'd like to add here. Sue. You're still on mute.
Sorry.
We're such the professionals.
Yes, I know. I should know how to do this by now, surely. No, just that I listened recently to Jan Hasbrook talking about their updated norms. And basically, just like Dibbles, every 5 or 6 years, maybe longer, they do go out and revalidate all of their assessments and their data based on, you know, a really wide range, a really big sample group. So although they're American children and often they're American passages, we just don't have the facility in Australia to do that kind of tens of thousands of children being norm referenced to get these valid scores. But you can see that the one that by the end of year 1, 60 words correct per minute, 90 to 100 words correct per minute is very similar to the American norms. I'd really like it, if you do want to know a little bit about Dibbles and the ORF, and this is all completely new to you, can you just pop something in the chat, and we'll make sure we spend a bit of time at the end, because it is such a simple but really powerful way of not only finding out about children's fluency, but also it's a really big and important indicator of how well they're comprehending text.
Thanks, Sue. Always got so much knowledge behind all our comments here. So we would be starting by doing some assessment with these kids and finding out what are their reading rates, or how many words per minute are they currently reading at. So there are many ways you could do this, but you need to find sample texts that are at their year level and then test them on that and see where they are for how many words per minute. And that's where these scales can help you out. Once you have a score for all your students, you can list them from highest to lowest, and you want to split them and sort of move the bottom half of your list beside the top half of your list. So you can see on this chart here, I have our stronger readers with Jen on 160 words correct per minute. She's listed in position number 1. And then we go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, based on their words correct per minute, from 160, then 153, 128, and you can see how they are decreasing. Then we cut that class off at the middle point, and we put a student who has come in 8th next to the student that came in first, because in this class we only have 14 kids. What a dream class. So we now have someone who's around the middle of the class working with the top. And this also means that our lowest reader isn't working with the very, very top and having that a really wide range and difference between the two. We don't want them to get frustrated with each other. We want it to be a really supportive partnership. So we partner up our lowest one with someone who's also still a stronger reader, but more from the middle of our pack. So hopefully that makes sense. You also might be wanting to keep a closer eye on these really lower end ones. Now, Sue, I love the way you raise your hand.
It never happens.
You're on mute.
It never happens any other time that I put my hand up. I just want to say to everybody that I've implemented these routines in a classroom where I'm working just 2 days a week. I am the classroom teacher this year, but the teacher I'm team teaching with also does it on the other days, as well as the other grade 1-2 teacher. And this process has been really powerful. But what we find with the 2 lowest, if you like, in that group, is that often we will read the text to them all together first. We can pretty much let the top there's 20 kids in my class, so the top 2/3 are pretty much right to go off and read their passages. But with the ones that might just need a little bit more scaffolding, I will read through the text fluently first before then they do their routine. So that, that's absolutely a adjustment you can do. And I'll answer that in the chat. Michelle, you can keep going.
Right, because I can't actually see the chat. Okay, so yes, that's how we create our partners. So let's have a look at how do we do the rest of the routine. We've got first of all, we establish our partner A and partner B. I feel like I'm jumping ahead a little bit here. So we have our stronger partner is always partner A. We want our partner A to be the first reader every single time. They are modelling fluent reading for the weaker reader so that they don't have to use so much energy in the decoding. They've already heard the passage and it should support them. We are also choosing texts that are aimed at the weaker reader's independent reading level. This is not about building up all that decoding and phonics practice. It's more about that fluency, that expression and prosody and building confidence. That's a really big part of this paired fluency routine. So we also create folders for the partners. There will be, hopefully you could have one folder each with the same text inside of them. But if not, you could just have the one folder and they share it and read along together from the same text. So the way you would start the routine on day 1 is ask partner A to go and collect their folders. So you would have that set up in your room. And then the week after, so that everyone gets a fair go, you might switch it to partner B. But I wouldn't be switching it every single day. It would just create confusion. So it might be partner A every day this week, and then partner B every day next week is the person to go and get the reading folders out. They sit side by side, both looking at their own text, hopefully, or they have the text placed between them in the middle. It's a really good idea to set a lesson objective. So it might be phrasing, it might be their expression or what the content is and their comprehension. If it's a slightly more complex piece of writing and you want them to really dig deep and understand what it's all about. But we might get to some of those other lesson objective ideas later. Sue, did you want to add something?
I just didn't want to stop your flow, but I just wanted to say that at the beginning, the lesson objective for probably, and I'm just going to be really realistic here, for the first 2 to 3 weeks that you do this, the lesson objective will be following the routine. So it will be, and I'm sure you're all not, I can't see you, but I'm sure you're all nodding your heads because you really need to set this up. So, you know, both the children are looking at, have eyes on the text at the same time, that the only thing they're talking about is the text, like they're reading the text. So I can't stress enough in the real world. It's just so important to take your time, practice the routines, get children to act out the routine, to be models. I ended up taking a video of my best fluency pairs, and we would watch it for the first couple of times we did it. We watched an exemplary pair do their routine. Now, obviously, I'm working with younger readers, but I also think you need to do that in grade 3 and grade 4. You'll just obviously adjust what you do. And I can't, this is a routine that if you get it established early, will take you all the way through primary school, and it has a huge bang for its buck.
Great. I love your experience that you're sharing with us today, Sue. So we've got the beginning of our routine set up. So once they're sitting, they've got their text, they know what they're meant to be focusing on for today's or this week's purpose of their fluency partners. Then partner A will always read first, as I mentioned just before. They should be able to read the text with relative ease. And so if it's fairly easy for them, we're hoping that they will be able to model good fluency. We would set the expected amount of reading for partner A. So in this routine, it's not necessarily being timed. It's more about, are they going to read a paragraph and then switch roles, or will they read the full page or the whole text? Maybe it's a poem or some lyrics. So set what you expect partner A to read and where they should read up to before they will be swapping for partner B's turn. Once partner A finishes that set amount, then partner B gets to read the same message or exactly the same part of the text that partner A just read. So it's a bit like echo reading in a way. They have just heard it, so that will make it a little bit easier and the cognitive load is a little bit lighter so that they can start to focus on making it sound smooth and fluent. All right. And then if there's still time in your session, which there probably will be, partner A will begin from the top again, because this is all about repeated reading, and we need to set that up so that the kids understand that, not just getting to the end and go, Miss, I'm finished, we read it already. They let them know that they're going to read it again and again, but we want them to sound amazing when they read it. We want them to sound like actors who are performing it, or if it was an information report, maybe they're a news presenter. And we want to also give them a little bit of purpose that they might be having to perform this or rehearse it so that they can recite it to the class at the end of the week, or maybe the principal comes in, or some parents, or you go to see your class buddies down the hallway and perform for them. So having some genuine motivation can impact. Now, over on the side of the screen here, setting up the routine, this is from a resource that we've created that we will send out at the end of our webinar tonight, with some other extra little bits on there too. So you can take that and use that in your class. Okay, so part of the paired fluency routines is error corrections, because both partners need to be active in this routine. One partner will be reading it out loud while the other one needs to be following on really closely. They will be tracking with their finger and making sure that what their partner is reading matches what is written on the page. Now, this will take a lot of rehearsal and practice, as Sue was mentioning. We need to get this right, and it will take quite a while, I would think. So this is a little bit of a prompt and a script that we can practice and rehearse. First of all, they can say, "You missed that word. Can you figure it out?" Waiting 3 seconds, so they might do something like that. They could then say, "Good, read it again from the start of the sentence," if their partner has found the correct word or read the correct word, not found. Or let's sound it out together. If there's a word that neither one of the partners can actually sound out, or they've read it but they don't actually understand what it might mean, you could have a process set up where they have to write it down on a mini whiteboard. And then at the end of the lesson, they could come and ask you. Or you might be roaming around the classroom watching what's going on, and you can see if someone's written down something on their mini whiteboard, then you might pop over and help those partners out. So the rest of that prompt there, let's sound it out together and read it again from the start of the sentence. So both of these error corrections prompt the student to go back and reread the sentence from the beginning, because we all know that fluent reading needs to go from the beginning of the sentence through and be phrased, rather than that choppy reading that happens when you have to stop to figure something out. Sue, any thoughts about how this has played out in your class?
Yes, so this, as you said, Michelle, this is something that we had to do quite a bit of role play, and and I had to do the whole thing. Would you say, "Oh, you're stupid, you forgot the word"? You have to really act it up or ham it up, as you can imagine. Well, certainly that's what I had to do in my class. And they'll need reminding of this again. Because what you will find sometimes, even though you have tried to do your groupings as best as you possibly can, as you know, we have, wide ranges in our classroom. So you kind of need to keep that encouraging. We're working together. We're not rolling our eyes if somebody misses it. So it is really important. But my kids have totally nailed it, and you can really see that they're tracking along and listening. But it's taken me, I'm going to be realistically, it's taken nearly a term, almost all of term 1, to get them into an absolute perfect routine, so that I can say, right, let's do fluency pairs. They're called apples and bananas, my 2 groups. I'll say, right, bananas, go and get the books. Apples, you go and find the place. Apples, you read first. But now we can do this routine start to finish, with their book boxes or the, the folders put away, in 15 minutes. And it's like seamless. But that took some time and some practice. And it's honestly, like, people tell you this is a really powerful way to build fluency, but it's gobsmacking just how much these children have improved. And these are children who nobody reads to at home. There's, a lot of children that don't even have books at home. So this is really their only opportunity for some of these kids to be reading their, connected text, other than working in their small group time, or stuff that we do, choral reading or echo reading on the board.
Great, thanks, Sue. So this corrections prompts is part of the resources that we've created, so you will receive that too. Okay, benefits of repeated reading. So through our paired fluency and repeated reading of the same text several times in one session, and then also repeated throughout the week, it provides students with opportunities to reread the same text multiple times, which is helping them to build accuracy, rate, prosody, confidence, and ultimately comprehension too. So, one thing I think is missing from there is joy. So once you can read something really well and you feel confident in it and you're proud of yourself when you're doing it, obviously there will be that sense of accomplishment and joy with their reading. So that's really powerful for those kids that feel like they're not very good readers. Oh, doesn't want to. Oh, let's go back there. So I mentioned earlier that it's good to set a purpose or learning intention for the week with your fluency pairs, because we don't want this just to be something that the kids just ring in and don't really think about or care about. So we need to set specific learning intentions to create that purpose in our sessions. And this could be something around rate, phrasing, intonation, expression, or comprehension, a deep reading. Now, obviously, you don't want to rush through all these in just 1 week and just do one after the other and keep chopping and changing. And you probably need to choose your purpose specifically based on the type of text that you have the kids reading that week. So I'm sure you are all more than capable of figuring out what would work best for your students or what works best for the text that you've chosen. Anything there, Sue? Should I keep going?
Sorry, I was so busy answering something in the chat.
Good.
Yeah, so I honestly think, because and correct me if I'm repeating something that you just said, but I honestly think that you get the routine set up. And, what I did with my kids is that they were just reading. We use Little Learners Love Literacy in our classroom, and we didn't have a lot of texts available to us initially. Now I've found all these great places to find texts, which we will share with you. But they were just reading their decodable text, their Little Learners book, at their independent level, to each other. Like that, I just got them to do that when we started their routine. But this term we've actually gone into the, them both reading the same text, that sort of thing. So the learning intention for a lot of the startup has just been, make sure you know what they're like. You have to both sit together and keep your eyes on the text. You have to find a place away from your friends. So, like a lot of it, and I know I'm talking about little people, but, unfortunately, when you're setting up these new routines, a lot of it's just crowd management. But it's worth persevering with, so that you could then throughout the year, as Michelle said, say, all right, today we're really going to scoop up phrases, or we're really going to notice punctuation today. We're going to just focus on what commas do, and what kind of rest we have when we come across a comma, and all of that kind of stuff. So I don't know, have I just completely gone off the track then? Because I was no good. All right.
No, that was a great elaboration on it. Thank you. What I'm thinking is that some of these would lend themselves more so to your older year levels, while, as Sue said, in her year ones and those younger year levels, it's just about building up that the rate, the phrasing, their expression. And you can play around with it and ask them, okay, today we're going to all be angry when we're reading it, even if it's not an angry piece. But just let them have a bit of fun and throw some drama in there too. Okay, so choosing our text types. There are many different types of text to choose from depending on the purpose and learning intention of the task. You could use poetry and song lyrics, picture storybooks and narratives. I love picture storybooks because so many of them already have that, that are set up in verse with rhyming words and have a real sort of rhythm to them. And once you point that out to the students and help them practice, then it just sounds so much better. You know, when you're reading a picture storybooks and you really notice the rhythm, and sometimes I get the kids to count out how many syllables there are in each line, and then they notice that the syllables are matching in lines A and B, but then lines C and D are matching but with a different number of syllables. So that can be really fun and interesting too. Fairy tales and fables, they might even then turn that into a little bit of a performance. Descriptive texts and excerpts from novels. So obviously this is aimed at your grade 4, 5, 6 classes, I would think. Scripts, readers' theatre and news reports. So you might not actually get given or have a news report in your collection, but you could easily take any non-fiction text and then create it or turn it into a news report, and then have the kids performing that as newsreaders. You could have their anchor man sitting at the desk and throw to the journalist who's out on site somewhere. Now, and non-fiction as well as news articles. So we are going to go into some really good websites and places you can find some of these resources. What I just realised we're missing there is obviously you can use your books that you're using in your literacy block, like Little Learners or your decodables. There are some great decodables out there that you can print and access for free too. Sue, you've got something to add?
Yeah, so it's probably, I've had quite a few questions in the chat about sort of levels and where kids are at, and about sort of what sort of texts and how much, and whether teachers should be reading with their kids as well. So I just want to reassure everyone that we'll give you a chance to ask questions at the end. So I would say, if your children haven't completely learnt the code and are confident with the whole simple and extended code, everybody calls them different things, but you know, they basically have a whole stack of words that they're automatic with, then it would make sense that you use largely decodable texts. But once children get to grade 3, if they have had an absolutely incredible foundational instruction in systematic synthetic phonics and you've been running structured literacy, by grade 3, they should be able to read any grade level text that you can find. Now, if you are, for example, doing a knowledge, a rich knowledge-based unit, like something that comes from, Nathaniel Swain's and Shane Pearson's Read to Learn, or a core knowledge unit, for example, then I would absolutely be trying to create passages based on the topic or the content that you're teaching, because what the research actually shows, the more the children read the same words but in slightly different texts, the more fluent they will be, which just makes sense. And that all fits into that idea that, for children to comprehend and to be fluent, they have to have a bit of background knowledge. So if you can kind of pair texts together. So, for example, you might, over a fortnight, give them lots of different texts about different kinds of amphibians or bugs or insects or that kind of thing. Or if you're reading a class novel out loud in the older grades, you could actually, with the correct crediting and being very careful about author's copyright, you could actually provide key passages from the text for the children to read, because they would have heard you reading it fluently. And I could go on and on and on, but I will stop.
Yeah, what I love about the paired fluency routines is that it can really deepen kids' understanding of that content that you're teaching in other aspects of your lessons. Like if you were teaching, there's a unit on the Vikings, and so you could find other texts that are linked to the Vikings, or maybe other ancient tribal groups and communities, and somehow have it all linked and have a purpose for choosing that text and building up like more exposure to similar vocabulary or and that phrasing, and building the knowledge as well. So the text length and complexity should be based on partner B's instructional level. So we want them to be able to read it at their independent level, and we want these texts to be short enough to complete within the session. You don't want to be just reading a little section of it and going on each day to something brand new. Here we go. The advice is that it should be between 50 to 250 words, depending on which grade level you're working with or partner B. Here we have a couple examples of some websites that are really good and free to access. One is called Works, and I think if we have time, we might have a quick flick over onto it. And another one, Newsella. Now, Newsella is great because you can find lots of really good articles in there, but they also allow you to adjust the lexile level. So if you want, you can select an article. Here we have The Sun, an engine of nuclear energy, and you can use the same article but get a more detailed and complex text for your more advanced partners, and you can simplify it for those other kids that are still building up that confidence abilities. So I've just put that there, ReadWorks and Newsella, and there's also different word counts that you can see before you select the article. It will tell you how many words are in the article. You can see on the ReadWorks one up here that this particular one, Japan, the land of the rising sun, it says grade 2. It's got a Lexile level of 700 and a word count of 170. I wanted to just also mention ChatGPT can be a really good place to get short texts. You could type in, give me a text of 200 words about amphibians, appropriate for grade 3. Include the words, and you could have a few words that you want included. And once it spits that out at you, you might go, oh no, I'm not really happy with that. Can you make it 150 words? Can you make it into a script like a news report? And voila, you've got a script, a Reader's Theatre script, quite possibly, or your news presenter script. Okay, I'll stop. Ooh, should I keep going? Well, then we'll do like a bit of show and tell with those websites, Sue.
I'm happy.
Oh, you're doing.
Sorry, I was doing chat, but I can tell the tired lady is not multitasking very well. I'm happy to do that at the end. Let's get through, and then there's been a few questions that we want to go over. I think that's important in the chat. I clearly think we're going to need to do more Tuesday teacher talks on fluency. I think there's a real hunger for this information.
This is wonderful. I'm really excited by this. Okay, so just a couple extra little things about our fluency. You still need to be explicitly teaching fluency through phrasing, punctuation, and intonation. Well, so you might start off your lesson by doing a lot of I do, we do. In fact, I think I do have that here in how we might include it. So your daily literacy block might include 15 to 30 minutes of fluency. It's really dependent on how you work your literacy block, what demands are already on you. You might already be using some independent reading time. You might think about switching that out and using fluency, paired fluency, rather than just independent reading, because the benefits are shown to outweigh that independent reading until you know that most or all of your kids are actually fluent readers. We can begin with explicit instruction in our lesson. Lots of I do, we do. So you might be showing how we are doing phrasing and like make little markings on a text and show, okay, we're going to this phrase belongs together, then this phrase, and then we have a full stop. What's that going to do for our reading? And do lots of modelling there. You can set the purpose for the paired reading fluency for that day or week. Allow repeated reading time. Repeat with the same text throughout the week and include performance or recitals at the end of the week. Now, we were talking about how that might look different in different classrooms. The performance part, you might be working to include this 5 days a week, in which case day 1 might have a lot more of that explicit instruction in your fluency time. Day 2 and day 3 might just be really focused on the kids having that rehearsal and practice. Day 4 and day 5 might end up being a few performances, rather than trying to get through your whole class doing a performance or recital on day 5. That just might be way too much time out of your day. So you could definitely come up with a bit of a schedule where different kids are performing on Thursday and then on Friday, and it might just be a couple each week, and you work your way through the class over several weeks. Sue?
I know, Michelle, you're saying performance, and that might be kind of causing dread in some teachers' stomachs, but look, I don't know about other people's kids, but the kids that all the kids I've taught are just desperate to share their skills. And so we just use the sticks. I have popsicle sticks, and they'll say, use the sticks, use the sticks. And I'll choose a couple of people to just read their passage. I usually get the pair to read their passage. And the other thing is that if you cannot bear to do show and tell one more time, what an amazing way to replace show and tell, unless you have to do it, because you are actually really showing the children, they're getting an opportunity to hear each other read more and more fluently. So, although we say performance, and I think readers' theatre is the unsung hero of fluency. So I've been raiding all of the old cupboards for the the old readers' theatre that's kind of gone out of fashion at the school I'm at in Sunshine. And because I really think as these kids get more confident, we really could be having even, 4 kids working together on a readers' theatre. And Cassie's just said you could have students record each other at the start of the week and then again at the end of it. And there's a whole stack of technology that you could be using, like Flipgrid and all of that. As I said, we need to do lots more of this because there's some great ideas. I will just say with the Flipgrid stuff, please check your tech person whether you have permission to use the software. Don't get caught. How do I know this? Using software that you're not supposed to use. Sorry.
That's all right. I'm just looking at the time. I'll just quickly look, we're just about at the end. Show you some of our references and resources that have gone into this presentation tonight. Some of the names that we often refer to because they are wonderful researchers and academics. So Tim Rosinski, he's big in fluency, as I mentioned earlier. He's written loads of articles. One of them that I referenced in here was Why Reading Fluency Should Be Hot. We have Tim Shanahan. He always has amazing blogs on all things literacy. And there's a couple references there. The Mega Book of Fluency. Lots of really good activities in there, different things. Just even using numbers or the alphabet to put in some punctuation and practice how to make your voice sound. We have five from 5 here. They've got some really good information too about fluency pairs. And that research paper, Research into Practice by Deslea Konza too. You can just Google that and it should come up. She's actually written about the six components of reading. So she took it from 5 pillars to 6 to include oral language too. And I've also popped up there Jan Hasbrook. She's written things on rockets, and you can find other things by her when you Google her name. So let's have a look at, are there some questions that we can have a chat about?
Sure. So just before we disappear, well, our photo disappears off the screen, you can really help us out if you wanted to say thanks, is by heading over to our website, signing up for our newsletter. We're also on Facebook and on Instagram. We'll put all that in the email that we send you tomorrow. That helps us, get the message out that we're doing this work. So we would really appreciate that. The whole reason we teach together is because we want to share ideas and help each other out getting these kids reading. So, so you can turn your screen off. We've done the promotional bit not very well. Okay, so A couple of questions that came up, and I'm really happy for people to just unmute and ask questions too. Just was a couple of things. I'll just go back to my first, it all depends. Okay, so I had a question was, is this replacing traditional reading groups where teachers feel they have to read with every student every day or multiple times a week? And I think that's a really good question. And before I even answer that, I think what's the most important thing is the main reason that most children will have problem with fluency is because they just don't have strong enough word recognition. And even if they're doing a really good job of decoding, they may still be in that sweaty stage, as Alison Clark calls it, that sweaty stage of sounding out. And they absolutely have to have their time in that stage to build their automaticity, or what Airy calls orthographic mapping, because they need to turn, that idea that every word wants to grow up to be a sight word. So you will probably have children who are still in that phase of taking on, their reading acquisition, that phase of their reading acquisition, that of course they're going to be disfluent because they are still absolutely doing that work of sounding out. So I think before you even start really digging down about why, or doing fluency pairs, you need to be kind of sure about why the kids in your class aren't fluent. Now, having said that, those kids in the sweaty stage of sounding out can still benefit from a fluency pair routine. You just need to be very careful about the kinds of text you give them. And what you could do is give them lists of words from the code that they're currently working on. And that is completely okay. So as a pair, they could just have words from the current code. Did you want to add anything to that, Michelle, while I cough?
Sorry, I got caught up in the chat then, trying to answer something else. So I'm sure what you had to say there was great.